In addition to facilitating community among practitioners, IPAC exists to build bridges between practitioners and academics. Le professeur Pierre DeCelles a enseigné pendant de nombreuses années à l'École nationale d'administration publique, dont il a été le directeur général. Presented jointly each year by IPAC and CAPA, the Canadian Association of Program and Public Administration, the Pierre DeCelles Award for Excellence in Teaching Public Administration recognizes the outstanding skill, accomplishment, and commitment of an exceptionally creative and effective teacher. I would like to call on Dr. Andrea Rounds, past president of CAPA, to present this year's DeCelles Awards.
Good day, everyone, and thank you very much, Mary Elise, for that lovely introduction. I have a distinct pleasure this morning of presenting this year's DeCelles Award, and Dr. Sanford Borens is this year's recipient. A longtime professor of public management at the University of Toronto and recently retired, Dr. Borens' commitment to online and experiential learning and the innovative use of narrative in teaching is an inspiration. It was clear to the DeCelles Award jury that he builds an inclusive and welcoming classroom, encouraging active engagement by students. Students consider his classes a safe space to discuss pressing and important issues of the day, and he's considered a pathbreaker in teaching approaches to public administration, applying narrative and critical thinking to material that is often thought to be dry or unengaging, not by us, of course, but collectively, perhaps. And if you're interested in learning more about Sandy's narrative approaches, as well as his views on all things public management and politics, I direct you to his blog at sanfordborens.com, as well as the video introduction that will be available later this month. So please join me in congratulating Dr. Sanford Borens, this year's DeCelles Prize winner. Clapping. And we have time for 2 questions with Dr. Borens today. So Sandy, my first question for you is, who would you like to thank for this award? Who would you like to recognize?
Thank you. First, I would like to thank my students. My approach to teaching is very participatory, and my students have taken up the challenge and they participate, and that's enabled my teaching to work. Much of my teaching has been done at the University of Toronto at Scarborough, whose students are extremely diverse, and the students have been willing to share their diverse experiences, and that makes it even better. Second, I'd like to thank my wife, Beth Hurst, who's a scholar in the area of narrative, and indeed we co-author. She pushed me to expand my knowledge of narrative, and I've been able to use that in the classroom. Third, I'd like to thank Alan Blakeney, the Premier of Saskatchewan during the 1970s. He and I co-taught a public management course for a number of years after he left politics. Blakeney was a brilliant and self-reflective practitioner, and I learned a lot from him about political decision-making. And I was able to take that into the classroom, and that enriched my teaching.
Thank you. And I just like to say that Sanford Borens' book with Alan Blakeney is still available, and I'd encourage you to pick it up if you haven't seen it already. So my second question for you is, what does winning this award mean to you?
As you've mentioned, I've retired now from full-time classroom teaching. So the award represents recognition from my colleagues all over Canada that in the classroom, I've done good work and that I've done innovative work. And the award will be an enormous source of satisfaction to me for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, and clapping from everyone on the virtual platform today. So thank you very much for providing us with this opportunity, and please join me in congratulating Dr. Borens yet again for this outstanding honor.
Most of my teaching has been with upper level undergraduates and graduate students in courses in public management, narrative, and strategic management. Teaching at that level means that the classes are small enough that I can have a significant degree of student participation. Over time, I came to believe the truth of the following saying or aphorism by Confucius about Confucius's considered view about learning. Quote, "I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. So if you think about this, hearing and forgetting is referring to lectures, and doing and understanding is referring to participatory education. And so, following Confucius, I've tried to move away from lectures and towards participation. The second thing I realized over time is that I realized that my historical experience is very different from that of my students. For instance, my students' parents weren't alive when Kennedy was shot. The students don't remember, or indeed they weren't alive for 9/11. And so I realized that to relate to them, I would have to meet them on their terms and talk about contemporary rather than historical experience. So these two realizations led to a number of important implications for my teaching. The first is that I moved from straight lecturing to more use of moving image materials, moving image narratives, clips from movies, clips from YouTube, and so on, and also more student engagement. And I did the latter through presentations, group work, and simulation exercises. So that's one implication. A second implication is that I made my classes always up to date in terms of the references. I was looking at sort of contemporary newspapers and the latest activities of the federal or provincial governments, of current budgets and so on, so that I could relate to what was happening now. And as long as I was teaching principles, I could illustrate principles of public administration by looking at things that were going on in the media today. A third implication is that I came to have a preference for teaching in a skills room. And by a skills room, I mean a flat room with furniture that can be reconfigured. I much prefer this to a lecture amphitheater with fixed seats. An amphitheater makes the class instructor focused, while as a skills room makes the class focused on the instructor and the student. Sort of the focus is shared around the room. And that's what I like. And that works with participatory teaching. Then there's a fourth implication. I discovered that I was quite good at creating plausible scenarios, scenarios of crises and things that might go wrong and so on, that I could use in my teaching and exams. And every year I came up with 3 or 4, again, making them contemporary. One example, in 2010, the G20 summit was held in Toronto. And the scenario I came up with was, I asked, what would happen if the premier of China had been taken hostage by Tibetan, Uyghur, or Falun Gong militants? And obviously, there's this, engaged the students in a great discussion of crisis management. It also sort of triggered the Chinese students, and I found that sort of interesting. Over the years, I ran some of my scenarios by practitioners, and the practitioners said that the scenarios were certainly plausible. And in 1 or 2 instances, practitioners said, well, something like that actually happened, but because it didn't hit the newspapers, I can't tell you about it. And that was a very rewarding form of confirmation. So to sum up, I'm trying to teach students to be able to respond to surprises, to be able to collaborate in groups, and to be able to present their thinking. And these are very important practitioner skills. And if they come out of my classes with those skills, I will be very satisfied. Thank you.